Hi, this is the audio-visual presentation for Tim Riley and Gunnar Klemmer. For this presentation, we will be discussing the gender pay gap in the U.S. Now, you may be thinking, oh yes, of course, the gender pay gap. I'm quite familiar with that fact that women are paid less than their male counterparts. As you'll see, it's not that simple of an issue. For our discussion, we will provide a brief overview of our position and then data about different aspects of the gender pay gap. Then we will discuss why some of that data can be misunderstood and finally deliver closing thoughts. Our position is that while the gender pay gap does exist in the American workplace, some of the methods for calculating the ratios are too simple to represent what's going on. By our estimation, the oft-quoted statistics can be misleading because various factors on an individual basis can shape differences in pay from person to person. As such, we do not see the gender pay gap as commonly reported as a primary issue. There are other considerations that must be accounted for. This graph from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows the difference in median weekly pay between men and women in the U.S. as a total, and broken down by level of education. As you can see, men earn more than women at all levels. If you take the average woman's earnings and divide by the average man's earnings, the ratio is 0.82. That means that for every $1 a man makes, a woman would make 82 cents. Note that this is not broken down by occupation. This next graph from the U.S. Census Bureau summarizes the relative pay of women compared to men across occupations. You can see that accountants have a similar pay gap as the total of 82.4%. While some occupations see a pay equity or even pay disparity with women making more than men, it's clear that most professions see women earning less than their male counterparts. Note that this graph does not account for differences in experience or education. This information from Pew Research is interesting because it shows how 3 different generations of women's pay compared to men at similar points in their careers. Notably, over time, women have made significant gains at the start of their careers in terms of leveling the pay gap, but as they age, their relative pay decreases to a similar level in the low 80s. This last piece of data is from payscale.org. It shows 2 lines of information from the past 8 years. 1, the average pay gap has been improving but is still large, and 2, when you account for occupation and qualifications such as education and experience, the pay gap is mostly eliminated.
While there may be a myriad of factors that affect compensation disparity, the gender gap is the one that has been talked about for decades. What is the real story behind the gender pay gap? The headlines often mention large disparities, but when we dig a little deeper, a more nuanced picture emerges. It's crucial not to oversimplify or generalize. Instead, by acknowledging the progress made and understanding the complexities, we can collaboratively work towards an even more equitable future. Research has shown that when you compare men and women in the same job position, working the same hours, and with identical educational and job experience, the pay difference is remarkably smaller than the other quoted figures. If you look at figure 1, you can see that the ratio is roughly 60% women's relative wages, and then sharply rises in the 1980s. If we also look at part-time work, some women might opt for it during the child-rearing years. When we start continuing the earnings for part-timers, the difference in overall earnings between genders doesn't seem so vast. Education is another interesting area. In 2020, women weren't just on par with men, they were surpassing them in acquiring college degrees. This surge in education is setting the stage for a future where women aren't just catching up, but might be leading the way in some sectors. There is a growing appreciation for work-life balance and flexibility, and many women are actively choosing roles that offer them more freedom, even if it means a slightly smaller paycheck. Lastly, for those worried that the gender pay gap is a stagnant issue, there's good news. Over the past few decades, the gap has been closing steadily. This isn't a mere coincidence. It's a testament to the changing times, values, and choices made by both women and our society. So the next time we chat about the gender pay gap, remember it's not just about the dollars and cents. It's about choices, priorities, and a constantly evolving society. History tells us that the path towards equality is not static. We made significant strides over the past decade, narrowing the pay gap more than many realize. Let's challenge ourselves to see the bigger picture and to appreciate the choices and priorities that shape these statistics because understanding is the first step to effective action.